everyone, welcome to the community classroom. This is Dr. Tracey McCarthy, psychologist, attorney, and educator, and what we're going to be doing today is an activity. And so this is a little different from what we typically do. So we're going to do an activity, and this will include everyone, and so no one will feel left out, and everyone can participate. It doesn't matter what culture you're from, what religious background you're from, your race, ethnicity, doesn't matter. Everyone can participate in this activity, and it's going to be beneficial for you personally on your journey when you're trying to figure out where you came from, what your ancestry is, what your heritage is. It's going to be a very helpful exercise if you haven't already started on this. Now, the main focus is going to be on surname analysis, but we're going to first start off with your first and middle name. And so what you're going to do is you're going to look up the meanings for your first and middle name. You're going to look, you can use like a baby name search finder in order to get information on your first and your middle name. And what you're going to do is you're going to look for the meaning of the name. You're going to look for alternative spellings, alternative understandings of the name, and you can sort of trace your name through cultures also to see where did it originate, where did it come from. This will also give you an idea of what felt right to your parents, because sometimes instinctively your parents will give you names that fit your culture that you may not have understood that way before. So when you do your surname search, your first and middle name might even make more sense to you. After that, you're going to do a surname search and analysis, and we're going to have a little bit more detail. We're going to use an example of a surname to kind of walk you through what it looks like when you do a surname search. And so we're going to get started on that. Again, it doesn't matter where you're from, you can participate in this activity, and it should be beneficial all the way around. And just remember to take notes as you're doing this. Let's get started. Okay, next, what you're going to do is you're going to answer two questions. Where did your ancestors come from? And how did you end up where you are? And you're going to do this based upon both your mother and your father. And so as far back as you know, where do you think your ancestors came from? Did they come from America? Did they originate in America? Did they come from Europe? Did they originate in Europe, from Asia, the Middle East, Africa, the islands? Where did your ancestors come from? And the next question is, what makes you believe that that's where your ancestors came from? Now, this isn't based upon any research at this point. This is just your guesstimation, so to speak. So you can just jot down where you think your mother's family came from and where you think your father's family came from. Now, of course, you're going to have many more branches the further back you go, but just your basic thoughts right now about where did your ancestors come from. And for those who are situated in the Caribbean and in the United States of America, the next part of the activity is for you to identify how your ancestors came to be in America or in the Caribbean specifically. So if they did not originate in America or in the Americas, how did they get here? And for those in America and the Americas who understand themselves as Indians or American descendants of slavery or Caribbean descendants of slavery, the next question is, if you have a non-Indian or a non-African name, how did you get the name that you have? How did your ancestors on both your mother's side and your father's side get these surnames? Now again, this may be a guesstimation when you start. However, once you actually do the activity, you should have some better answers in terms of where these surnames came from. And so again, you're going to start off with, if you are in the Caribbean or you are in the United States, how did you get that surname if you are identifying as someone who is a descendant of someone who was a victim of slavery, or if you are identifying as someone who is indigenous to America, including the Americas. Okay, starting off with the surnames, we're just going to use the surname Allen for this activity. And so you're going to jot down your mother's maiden name and your father's surname to do this activity. And what you're going to do is you're going to search databases using your surname, and then you can just type in surname afterwards. And it should start to generate some resources to get information regarding your surname. And what you'll find is that you'll get information regarding the origin of the surname. You will also see when there are spelling variations, and you might see this when you're doing ancestry research. Your family's names will be spelled all sorts of ways. And so when you look at the variations, that will also give you an indication as to where your surname came from. And so you can see with the Allen surname, it has English roots and Scottish roots. And this also gives you an indication that it is related to a Gaelic ancestry, and it's related to the word rock. And here's another site where you can get a little bit more information regarding the surname. And so it talks about the surname also being in Ireland. So you've got England, Scotland, and Ireland. That often also generally equates to it being in France at some point in time. And so you can see from here that there are several places where there are roles, historic roles with this surname. So that'll give you some opportunities to find some other resources in terms of getting information for your ancestry. Okay, now another site gives a little bit more information and addresses things like the family crest and coat of arms. And so this also reiterates that this name has English, French, and Irish roots in addition to Scottish roots. And it indicates that the surname Allen was first found in the lands of Shropshire. And again, it reiterates that this name is associated with the word rock. And as you can see here, there are many ways to spell Allen, and many names that are related to the original Allen that was recorded. And so you can see it with just one L, with two L's, with an E, with an A, with an EY, with an AYNE. And so you need to be on the lookout for those sorts of things. And then at the end you have McAllen. And so, and it says there are many, ways to spell this name, or many variations of that original root. And the important thing to remember is that they are all related. And so it's sort of like a tree trunk with roots, and then these are the branches. Another thing that you can find when you do your surname search and analysis is when your surname first entered the West and Australia, for the most part. So you can find out when your surname first entered the United States, when it first entered the Caribbean, when it first entered Canada, when it first entered Australia. And so what this does is it gives you an idea of how far back you can trace your ancestors in the West. This will also get you thinking about how your ancestors came to have these surnames. This is particularly important for those who are identifying as Indian, but who are saying that they had no ancestors who were enslaved. So if they had no ancestors who were enslaved, where did they get the surnames from? And remember that many people who identify as Indian have Scottish and Irish surnames. So the question is, where did those Irish and Scottish surnames come from? Same thing for the Caribbean. Where did all of those Irish and Scottish and Spanish and French surnames come from? And as with those on the mainland in terms of America, in the Caribbean, this is probably even more important because those who would be considered slave owners were not really stationed as much in the Caribbean as they would have been stationed in America. Oftentimes, those who were considered slave owners were living in Europe, and they had overseers who were living in the Caribbean. And so the question would be, where did all of these Scottish and Irish surnames come from? And as you remember, a number of people were deported out of Europe due to being convicted of things like treason. And so one of the things that you can look for is, how did your ancestor get to wherever they, ended up? And so one of the things that happened, of course, going to Australia from England, you can see the convict list. And so you can see this name, John Allen, Joseph Allen, William Allen, that these individuals were transported on the convict ships from England going into Australia. And you can even see the name of the ship and the date. And so for those of you who may have had ancestors who were convicted of usually high treason coming from Europe after one of the wars or conflicts related to the Stuart family or the Cromwell, you can also tend to find information about those ancestors on the passenger list related to convict ships. Now, what we're going to reserve the comment section for is information regarding surname searches. And so if you find resources that you think would be helpful for people on their journey to understanding more about their surnames or about their ancestry, you can put that information in the comment section. That will be helpful. So if you find out, that from a particular geographic space, certain common surnames were, assigned to people in that particular geographic space, or that certain surnames traveled in particular directions, or there are certain cultural or religious affiliations related to certain surnames. If you have some more historical information about certain surnames, that would be great. You can share whatever information you want to share about surnames in the comment section. And if you have any tips for other people regarding, some more resources, again, directions that they can go in terms of tracing their own ancestry. Remember, knowledge is power. Take care and see you soon.